everybody, CVM here. You might recognize me from such SCG Live blowouts as the Dictate of the Twin God Spark Trooper fiasco and the Harness by Force top deck out of Mono Red, but this time I'm going to be doing a sweet unboxing video for you guys. Previously we had BBD do some videos, got some good feedback, and I think I can actually do it better, so we're going to try and one-up him. This time we have the Modern Event deck is what we're going to be opening. This product was designed by Ben Hayes at Wizards of the Coast, and they wanted to use it as a way to try and kickstart the ever-growing Modern format. So this is a deck complete, 75 cards, 60 with a 15-card sideboard. You can open it, use the sleeves, jump right into a tournament. And so we're just going to go ahead and open it up and see what sweet cards we've got. All right, everybody, we are here with this Modern Event deck. And I'm excited. We're going to jump in and open it. But first, I just want to notice here, it does have a name. It's March of the Multitudes. And as you can see here, we've got a white and a black symbol lit up. So it's going to be a black-white deck. Let's go ahead and jump right in. I'm usually pretty terrible at opening these shrink-wrap things, but that was actually fairly easy. And it looks like it slides out. Got a sweet little deck box here. Now, the material is kind of in between like a fat pack box and like a normal deck box. So it definitely looks like it's a little bit better material than you would expect. Got these sweet reflective sleeves. And a dice. And we have an insert here, kind of a strategy guide. So March of the Multitudes. Has you a list here of all the cards that's in the deck, in addition to kind of how you would use your sideboard in general, and just an idea of what you're going to be wanting to do with the deck. So this deck is primarily built off of a black-white token strategy, so that's what we're going to see a lot of once we actually jump into the deck, and that's what it's going to talk about in here, how the goal is to just try and overwhelm your opponent, as well as rip apart their hand with a bunch of the sweet hand disruption cards. So let's go ahead and see if we can open the plastic and jump right into the main deck. Actually, it's not all that bad. Like I said, I'm usually really terrible at opening these plastic things, but let's just take a look. So we have 2 Soul Wardens, which are really sweet with the token theme of the deck, since whenever a creature comes into play, we're going to gain a life, and if we're generating a bunch of tokens, we're going to gain a bunch of life. 3 Tide Hollow Scullers, just another card to control your opponent's hand, which is pretty sweet. It goes along with these Inquisition of Kozilek, which are actually very expensive Magic cards, so it's kind of cool that you get them in this Modern Event deck. We have 3 Path to Exile as some removal spells, which are also not very cheap. They were reprinted in Modern Masters, but they're still not very cheap, so it's kind of cool that you get 3 of them in here. 2 Shrine of Loyal Legions, just ways to make more tokens. We're going to be getting counters off of our white spells that we cast. A unique thing about this card is it was played quite a bit during Mirrodin Block when it was originally printed in Scars of Mirrodin, and there was quite a few situations with missed triggers. So none of the triggers to add counters onto this card are maze, so you actually have to remember to do them. And before, if your opponent didn't remind you, then they would actually get in trouble too. But now with the way the rules have changed, you can miss triggers that are must triggers, and your opponent no longer has to remind you. So always make sure you get your triggers on those guys. We have 3 Honor of the Pure, just as ways to boost our token army. Same with these Intangible Virtues, because the majority of our tokens are going to be white, so Honor of the Pure will pump them. They're all tokens, so Virtue gives them +1/+1 and Vigilance, which is sweet. We have 4 Raise the Alarm, that a lot of people are going to be a little more familiar with now that it was recently reprinted in M15. But the card is from the original Mirrodin back in the day for all of us old school players. And we have 3 Zealous Persecution that goes along with our token theme to pump our creatures and make theirs smaller. And we have a Sword of Feast and Famine. So this is a Legacy standout card. It hasn't been getting as much play as of recent because of the Treasure Cruise Menace. But there was a period of time where Sword of Feast and Famine was absurdly expensive, and part of the best standard deck that's been in standard almost ever, as well as one of the cards that made Stoneforge Mystic abandoned standard. So we get a Sword of Feast and Famine as a pretty big money card. We have some more token generators here with 4 Lingering Souls. This card also is banned in block constructed for Innistrad block, so when a card gets banned in a format, you know it's usually pretty darn good. 4 Spectral Processions, some more tokens. And here we have an Elspeth Knight Errant, another money card. Unfortunately, it's worth a little bit less now than it could be because it was reprinted in Modern Masters, but it's still worth quite a bit. So definitely nice that you have your Elspeth there. Now this is actually a really neat one, is there are 4 Caves of Koilos. So these were reprinted in M15, so they're legal in Standard as well. So if you are just trying to build up a collection and have a Modern deck available to you, this is very good because you get a playset, all 4 of Caves of Koilos. We have 2 City of Brass, just is another white-black dual land. Since we have 4 chapels and 4 caves, this is just a way to give us black and white mana that come into play untapped. 4 Isolated Chapel, again just the buddy land from Innistrad, which are, these are actually worth $5 or so themselves, so pretty good value there. A Vault of the Archangel. This is actually a really good card in this deck because we have a bunch of 1/1 creatures, and while we have some ways with our enchantments to actually make them bigger, this gives them Death Touch and Lifelink. So the Lifelink can be relevant for us gaining life, but the Death Touch is huge because it makes our 1/1s trade with their 15/15 Emrakul. So if they want to block one of our Spectral Procession tokens with their Emrakul, it's going to die when we use our Vault of the Archangel. And then we have 4 Windbrisk Heights, which is a card that a lot of people might not be too familiar with. But because we have all of these cards that are generating multiple creatures at a time, it becomes really easy to trigger the Hideaway ability on the Windbrisk Heights to allow us to cast the spell that we get off of it. So, there can be times where it might be like a Zel's Persecution, so we get to make our creatures bigger. It could be like an Honor of the Pure or an Intangible Virtue. We get to make our creatures bigger because the trigger for it lets you cast the spell. It doesn't have to be like normal timing. So if it's an enchantment, you still can play it at instant speed. So you can do it during your combat step, which is pretty sweet. Then we have some basic lands. Now, one of the things that I'm actually really excited about for this Modern deck with the basic lands, and it might be a little weird, is that I really like that they're all the same art for the basic land. So we have all 5 planes are the same art, all 4 swamps are the same art, a little bit of OCD in all of us that play Magic, especially with our basic lands. So it's pretty neat that you get all your lands that are the same art. Now, one of the big questions that I know a lot of people might have for this deck is, for the main deck, is it good enough to just pick up and play in a Modern event? And from looking at it, I think the answer is yes. I definitely can see some cards that I would want to change around. Like, I definitely think you want a full 4 Path to Exile and a full 4 Inquisition of Kozilek. And as awesome as Sword of Feast and Famine is, I think I'd rather have it in the sideboard to bring in against decks that have like Abrupt Decay or Dismember. But the deck itself actually looks like it's just ready to go right out of the box. I would not be upset picking this deck up and just playing it just as is. Now, some of the other top-end cards that I think would be very good in this deck, really only one comes to mind, and that's Hero of Bladehold. I think Hero of Bladehold would be a perfect addition to this deck. Unfortunately, it is gaining a little bit of popularity, so the price is going up on it. But it's a 3/4 creature for 2 colorless and 2 white with Battle Cry, so whenever it attacks, all of your other attacking creatures get +1/+0. And also, when it attacks, you get to put 2 1/1 tokens into play tapped and attacking. So they get pumped by Intangible Virtue. They're all white, so they get pumped by Honor of the Pure. And the +1/+0 from the Battle Cry is going to pump all of your Spectral Procession tokens, your Lingering Soul tokens, and your Raise the Alarm tokens. So we're just going to have a giant monstrous army of tokens that's going to be able to swarm our opponents. I think that type of strategy is actually very good in Modern, especially now with how Treasure Cruise is becoming very popular. This is a little high-end strategy here, but cards like Treasure Cruise and the Blue-Red Delver deck that's playing it in Modern right now, it thrives on trading 1 for 1 and then pulling ahead when they get to draw 3 cards. But when we're playing something like Lingering Souls, where we're getting 4 creatures out of 1 card, it's really hard for them to effectively trade us 1-for-1 and then pull ahead with their treasure cruises. So this type of strategy, I think, is actually primed to be very, very good right now. And I would not be surprised if somebody were to take this to, let's say an SCG game night where they decided to run Modern, or an F&M that's Modern now that you can play any format and just win or do very well with this deck, because I think it's positioned pretty well in the actual format right now. Let's take a look at the sideboard and see what we get here. Oh, I actually also like that it gives us tokens. So we have some mirror tokens for our Shrine of Loyal Legions. Unfortunately, they aren't white, so they're not going to get pumped from our Honor of the Pure, but they do get benefits from the intangible virtues. We've got soldier tokens for our Raise the Alarms. And it looks like it doesn't give us any spirits for Spectral Procession. Oh, they're on the back. So it looks like it does give us spirits for our Spectral Procession and our Lingering Souls. And we get an Elspeth emblem. So that's kind of sweet. So we've got tokens and emblems on each side. I kind of hope wish they'd do this with like the regular cards, and you can kind of get extra bang for your buck. Now in the sideboard, it looks like we have 3 Relic of Progenitus. I'm going to make some room here for us. I actually really like Relic of Progenitus right now as a sideboard card, because again, you keep hearing me talk about this Treasure Cruise card. So it costs 8 mana, 7 in a blue, and you draw 3 cards. So you think, 8 mana, draw 3 cards, that's not very good. You could just pay 5 mana and draw 3 cards at instant speed with Jace's Ingenuity. But it has Delve. So you're casting Lightning Bolts and using fetch lands, putting cards in your graveyard. You get to draw 3 cards for 1 blue mana. Relic of Progenitus helps you stop that. You're able to use it every turn to remove a card out of your opponent's graveyard. So if you happen to be proactive with it, you can keep them off of the critical mass of cards needed to take advantage of the Delve mechanic. And if you happen to draw it in the mid to late game, you can always pop it for an extra colorless to draw a card. This card's also good against decks using Tarmogoyf, which is another huge card in Modern. So Tarmogoyf has power and toughness equal to the number of different card types in all graveyards, with an extra 1 bump on the toughness so that it can live if there's nothing in a graveyard. Relic of Progenitus is very good against that. Burnt and Forge Tender, for all those crazy people out there that want to play Burn. Lava Spike and Goblin Guide are 2 good cards, and people just keep casting them, so we have to have answers. 3 Duress. These are also good cards against Burn. They're also very good against any of the Splinter Twin combo decks, as well as like the Storm deck. 3 Kataki's War Wage. So what this tells me is that Ben Hayes did not want this deck to lose to Affinity. Affinity is the actual deck that I thought that they were going to do the event deck based around. I'm kind of happy they didn't, because I think that would have been a little boring. But Kataki's War Wage is a very, very good card against Affinity. It gives all artifacts an upkeep of 1, or they have to sacrifice it. And the Affinity deck is poised to try and put out a bunch of artifacts really cheap and then overwhelm you with like their lands or the benefits from cranial plating. And this card can just shut them down. And they don't have a lot of answers. We have 2 Dismembers just as removal spells and 2 Ghost Quarters to help us against the Valakut deck. So if I were to change anything with the sideboard, I noticed that the discard spells they use between the main and the sideboard is Inquisition of Kozilek and Duress. Thoughtseize is definitely a better card, so I would rather have Thoughtseize over one of the 2, probably over the Inquisitions that are in the main. So if you have Thoughtseizes, I'd recommend that you play Thoughtseizes instead. The rest of the sideboard actually looks really good. Kataki's War Wage is very good. Burnt and Forge Tender is very good. Ghost Quarter is good. You could potentially play something like Stony Silence over Kataki, but I probably wouldn't do that. I don't really think that would be much better. So this deck is actually very, very good. I am still impressed by the box. I don't know if you guys can actually see here that we do have, it's kind of shiny on the box, kind of like the sleeves, which is definitely pretty neat. And if I had this, I definitely would be using the box to store my sweet black-white deck in as I pummel my opponents that wanted to battle against me with Modern. So thank you so much for watching the unboxing video, guys. I really appreciate you hanging out. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel so that you can see some of our other videos, as well as you can check them out over here on the side. There's going to be some videos that will be popping up on the side. I definitely really appreciate you coming and hanging out, and make sure you check us out for the next video.